Hello, and welcome to Team Franco Bodybuilding Podcast, episode number 20. It's already the end of April, and when I started to do these podcasts beginning of January, honestly, the intent was to talk about contest prep, which I did. We would be in the thick of bodybuilding shows. I would be promoting a show that would be happening next month. So this was going to be a great outlet to discuss the ins and outs of coaching competitors, promoting shows, posing classes, all the good stuff with bodybuilding, and to talk about the ups and downs, the positives and negatives, and all that stuff. Which to me is just something I like to do and actually put out there so people can learn. I've done some podcasts about diet and such, and I plan on returning to that stuff. There's no doubt about it. But what really ties in this podcast with how times change is that often what is surrounding us as people dictates what we're going to do. Meaning that, my podcasts, although are relative to bodybuilding and fitness, but I've been talking a lot more about mindset and how to handle things, which all have a place, in success when it comes to bodybuilding, exercise, fitness. Believe me, it has a place. So I'm glad, to be doing these type of podcasts. If you haven't listened, just, go back and look at some of the titles, and you may be interested in listening and sharing. But the point that I'm getting at is that what surrounds us really decides what we're doing. And that is what I really want to dive into today, and talk about other type of athletes and how they handle pressure. I wouldn't be making this podcast if we weren't in this situation, but it does tie into you as a person and how you handle things. Now, when you look at someone who has success, okay, I'm jumping ahead now. My favorite sports, if you don't know me, obviously bodybuilding, but I was really into baseball, which I've given you some baseball stories already. Big fan of football, and obviously, like I said, bodybuilding. Now, when you look at when people have pressure or what's surrounding them becomes more challenging, you'll see one of two type of people. You'll see the person that simply crumbles under pressure. When someone starts a diet and it's too hard, they may just crumble and they can't adapt and all that stuff, and they'll just fall to pieces and they can't handle it. When you see certain athletes in the limelight, obviously they're talented, they have good genes and everything, but the one common characteristic is that they're just simply cool. They're relaxed. The pressure of the moment, the pressure doesn't get to them. You ever see that? It's just like la da 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 da. And why is that? That's something that's interesting. Why is that? Is it because they're confident? Is it because of their training? Meaning that they've trained over and over again and they practice over and over again. So when they hit a more difficult time or more pressure moment, it's no big deal. I did a whole podcast on training the mind and training the body to become better. And maybe that's a case. Or maybe they're just so confident in themselves they don't give a shit if they fail. That might be a thing also. You look at certain athletes, the first one that comes to my mind, and I'm aging myself, is Joe Montana. Quarterback for the 49ers, won a few Super Bowls, or two, I'm not sure. Then went on playing for Kansas City, and his nickname was Joe Cool. Now, if you look at him, he was not like a specimen. He wasn't like a buff quarterback. Nor quarterbacks have to be. He wasn't really tall, didn't show great physical capabilities, but whenever you watched him play, it was almost like he was just in his backyard throwing a football to his friends, drinking beer, just having a good time, just throwing. And to see what he did in a couple of the Super Bowls, it's like, oh my God. How does he remain so cool? If you look at, then you go on to other football players. One of the most hated, Tom Brady. He's another one. He's probably a product of his great training and repetition. So when the pressure gets on, he just does what he does, what he's programmed to do. In baseball, a good indicator of those who are just remaining cool all the time, again, to me, is Derek Jeter. I'm a big Yankee fan, all right, so hate on me. But when you watched him play, it was no different. The way that he played in a spring training game to a World Series game was the same. It was a constant, just constant coolness about him. He wasn't the greatest at one thing. It wasn't like the best shortstop ever or a power hitter. He just did his job. I mean, you have to trust me on this. He just did his job. And I see this in some competitors I work with over the years that were just more laid back, more cool, and they had all the success. This one woman I worked with years ago, she was a Yorton Cup champ. She won a big show before that, and we used to speak on the phone. And she was just so laid back. It's just like so matter of fact, like just did it. Now, what do these people all have in common? To me, is that they embrace the challenge. They have training. They have that repetition over and over again. So when the moments become more challenging, they become, hard. It's like any other day. So you see where I'm going with all this. Some of us are in a more challenging spot than others. And I don't want to get too into the current issue because, again, if someone's listening to this 5 years from now, they may remember it, but it's not going to be as important. But it plays a major role on how we, hold ourselves. Is that when there's something critical going on that's more challenging, if it's a Super Bowl, a World Series, a top bodybuilding show, a job interview, is how we carry ourselves. Basically that brings out the best or the worst, And if you wanted to bring out your best, you got to stay even keel. You got to be training. You got to do what you have to do day in and day out, because over time it's going to develop the body to perform and also the mind. If you train your mind daily, meaning if you feed your mind with positive thoughts, stay within the moment, you're not going to be fazed when there's going to be a challenge. All right? It's just, if take Derek Jeter or any other baseball player, if you're taking spring training, which is super relaxed, no pressure at all because you're on the team, to a World Series game, it's bases are loaded, 2 outs, full count, and you're the last hope to win. If you can treat that moment the same as spring training and stay even keel, you're going to have a more successful life. You're going to have an easier time when the chips are down. You're going to be able to accomplish what you want to do. So it's really a matter of attitude. And come with the attitude, it's about training the mind to adapt, to not to let the highs get too high, not to let the lows get too low. It's just an even keelness day in and day out, focusing on what's right in front of you, what that you can control, and not to have the anxiety of what may happen or the negative thoughts of what did happen, because neither of them matter to be in the moment. All these people that I talked about all lived in the moment. So when you do, you're just doing what needs to be done. Your training takes over. I mean, it's not easy, believe me. Training to a point, your mind to be so relaxed, it does take practice. It does take time. But you have to want it also. You can't let the little distractions bother you and you flip the switch going 0 to 60. I mean, you see that in contest prep all the time. I see that with competitors throughout the years. It's just that they think the switch is flipped automatically, that things are going to happen magically and they're going to succeed. But then they realize the consistency of just eating less and training when you're tired and not feeling well becomes a greater challenge. And then you see their behavior change. I get that a lot. It's like they change completely. And why is that? Is that maybe because they just can't handle it? I mean, I get it. We all get cranky with less food. But the people that we're living with, it's not their fault that we shouldn't be yelling at them if the turkey is not measured out properly, or we ran out of eggs, or someone's eating your whey protein. No, it becomes with our training. And unfortunately, that pressure of contest prep can bring out the best or the worst. How can we avoid it from bringing out the worst? Don't make it as a big deal. Keep it even keel. It's not going to, dictate your future. You're doing it because you want to do it to help improve your body, to help improve your character. So you learn, so you evolve. And just the opposite. If it brings out the best in you, well, that's what it's all about. The challenges, bring out the best. I mean, in this crisis, you're seeing both. I scroll through social media and you see some posts and you're shaking your head. Everyone's so negative. Well, what's that going to do? But then you see all the positive things too, bringing out the best. Taking advantage of the moment to show that you are, capable of handling. I know, I'm going off and on here, but what it really comes down to is training the mind and training the body and staying in the moment, because when, there's highs, you should be able to handle them, and not brag and not, show off. And when there are the lows, you should be able to continue to perform, to continue what you're doing, because you trained your body and your mind to handle it. So it's really about learning what is best for you and understanding that there's always going to be highs and lows. They're going to decide on your personality, unfortunately. But if you just stay within the moment, you're not going to have those major swings, and it's just going to be another day of productivity. To me, that's what, the ultimate goal of life is staying within the moment and enjoying it and taking on the challenges, because that's, to me, that's what life's about. Taking on the challenges, but handling them. Again, going back to the few athletes I was talking about, they took on the challenges like it was no big deal. They performed, and everyone thinks they're a rock star. You take a bodybuilder who just goes with the prep, just manages through it because, this is something they want to do. No one's forcing it. And they take it on, and they just roll with it, And whatever happens on show day happens. And they learn from that, and they move on. It's an evolution. So really, it's up to you. You shouldn't let anyone decide for you, but it's interesting to see how when there's a challenge that people are given and how they respond. And to me, that's a true indicator of who you really are. And it's up to you. There's no, take responsibility. It's don't say, well, this is happening, so I got to act this way. Do you really have to act that way? I mean, that's a question that you always have to ask yourself. To me, it's just constant evenness. To me, is success. Whatever it is. If it's bodybuilding, you're just doing what you do every day in and day out, making the best of it, because it's going to pay dividends down the road. You don't want to look back and say that you missed out on an opportunity. Or if you're an athlete, you endure. You look forward to the challenging, because it shows that your hard work of your training of your mind and your body has paid off. So this was just, I made a post the other day on Facebook sort of talking about this. It's up to you. Do you want to sit on the bench, take advantage of the moment? Or let me rephrase that. Do you want to sit on the bench and avoid the moment, or step to the plate and take advantage of the moment? Because when it comes to critical times, hard times, that really dictates on how your behavior is, Well, if it is, it's time to look at yourself and maybe reevaluate to stay more positive. So, guys, I know I rambled. Hoping this podcast has been helpful. And just a reminder to you that even during tough times, if you've ever gone through a prep, or if you're thinking about doing a prep, or you're having a tough time at home due to what's going on, it really comes down to being cool, trying. I mean, it doesn't happen overnight. We're not born with it. It's all about training. It's just about repetition, reminding yourself, to be happy. I talked about that in my last podcast on how that's important for success. And it really is. Because we can't control everything. We can control our actions when it comes to training. And when I'm talking about training, it's just not always weight training. Although that does tie in. The more you weight train, the better you're going to be. The more you weight train on a particular exercise, you're going to get better. But training the body, training the mind is really the key to being even keel, to handling a crisis, so you're not going to have those crazy swings of ups and downs. So I'm going to wrap this one up. Hopefully you found it was helpful. If you do so, please feel free to share. If you have any questions or concerns, I'm always here. You can email me, which is the best way to email me, at fitfranco@verizon.net. If you're still listening, I do have a couple Facebook pages, Team Franco Bodybuilding. I'm on Instagram, Team Franco Bodybuilding, and a couple personal pages under my name. And if you're ever interested in coaching, hit me up. Now's the time to really tie it together if you're falling apart with your diet. We can get you back going. Hope all is well, and I'll talk to you soon, guys.